If everyone can please take their seats, we'll get the meeting underway. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the fifth meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Transportation for the 2024 Interim Committee. Interim. Before we call the roll, I'd like to remind members to please silence your cell phone and those in the audience as well. Also, meeting materials for today's meeting can be found online and are currently available on the Transportation Committee LRC website. And with that, Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Berg, Senator Carpenter, Senator Mills, Senator Smith, Senator Storm, Senator Wheeler, here. Senator Williams, Senator Wilson, here. Senator Yates, present. Representative Branscombe, Representative Bridges, here. Representative Camuel,
here.
Representative Dixon, Representative Elliott, Representative Fleming, present. Representative Griffey, here. Representative Hale, Representative Heverin,
Present.
Representative Herron, here. Representative Hodgson, Representative Huff,
here.
Representative Imes,
Present.
Representative Lewis,
Here.
Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Mosier, Representative Neighbors,
Here.
Representative Palumbo,
Here.
Representative Roberts, Representative Smith, Representative Tackett Lafferty,
Here.
Representative Thomas,
Present.
Representative Upchurch,
Here.
Representative Wesley, Representative Williams, Co-Chair Higdon, Chairman Blanton.
Here. We do have a quorum and we are constituted to do business. Before we begin, before we start our agenda today, Senator Higdon and I would like to take a moment to remember Senator Johnny Turner, who recently passed. As y'all know, the Transportation Committee, the General Assembly, and the entire Commonwealth suffered a huge Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's the right thing to do for us to take a minute to remember our colleague who we all knew so very well, and he was part of the fabric of this General Assembly. A couple things you can say about Senator Johnny Turner. He loved God. He loved his family. He loved his country. He worked hard and loved every one of his constituents, and he loved Eastern Kentucky. He would, anytime something come up about Eastern Kentucky, you knew that he was ready to defend and support Eastern Kentucky in any way that he could. We all have colleagues here that we trust, but one thing about Johnny Turner, if he ever told you anything, if he ever made a commitment to you, it was golden. He would not back down. Nobody could ever take him off of a commitment that he made. And, we need more like Johnny Turner, and I think he could be an inspiration to each and every one of us. I do know this. I know when he got to heaven a few weeks ago, when he met God, he said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And rest in peace, Johnny Turner. Every time I hear your name, I'll smile because you always wonder what you had on your mind. And so he was a fighter. And with that said, I'm sure others will have something to say, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, but I'm going to yield to Senator Wheeler. Senator Wheeler did a awesome eulogy for Senator Turner at his funeral, and I want to yield to him.
Yeah, it was my great honor to know Johnny as a colleague as well as a friend. during my time in Frankfurt and even to some degree before we got down here. It's no understatement to say that in the hills of eastern Kentucky, he was a legal legend. He told me, reminded me often that he had practiced law about 3 months longer than I've been alive. He was licensed in January of 1978 and continued to practice law up until his accident in September of 2015. And so, I had known of Johnny for many years, but then in many ways, I did get elected a few months before him in a special election, but for all intents and purposes, we came down here at the same time in 2020 and had offices right next to each other, and perhaps due to our mutual career paths and in our neighboring districts and similarities, we became fast friends. And having Johnny as a friend is really one of the great blessings that I'll have in my life. I can't think of a conversation I had with him that I didn't enjoy. He was a great person to talk to about legislation, about the law, and, in 46 years of practice, there were very few instances that hadn't crossed his path at one point or another. So, his country dialect sometimes may have obscured an extremely keen legal mind and perhaps disarmed a few of his foes much to their detriment. And, I think, like you say, every time I think about him, I want to smile. As Jimmy saying, the other thing that he always had as well, we were talking about this at dinner last night, was his pearl-handled pistol, and he kept a couple others in his office too, just in case. And I can think of one occasion he wouldn't care to hand those out too if he thought you might need one. But I told him that, one time when we had a few protesters at the Capitol, he goes, "Here, brother, you might need this." And I told Johnny, I said, "Well, Johnny, I don't know." I said, "Last I count, there's probably at least 10 Republicans and Robin on the floor. They're packing heat, so the best thing I can do is just dive under the desk and let you cover me." And he said, "Well, that's good, brother. You just be safe." And I have no doubt he would have covered me. If he was your friend, he had your back always. And he's going to be sorely missed on this committee. He'll be sorely missed in the mountains of eastern Kentucky, and most of all, he's going to be sorely missed by his very wonderful family, very accomplished family. And I think it's just a tragic loss. But the memories will linger on long after in this General Assembly and in the region that he's from.
Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And being the whip, I had a lot of opportunity to interact with Johnny. If you see us on TV, I'm usually the one walking around talking to everybody all the time. I'm never in my seat. My wife always, when she looks, she says, "You're never in your seat." And so Johnny Turner was never in his seat either, because I was trying to find him wherever he was at, talking to somebody, telling him a story, and he told a real good story. But he always had a lot of admiration for his kids and his family and talked a lot about them. But he really cared about his community over in the mountains and his folks and represented them very, very well. But when I would ask him about legislation, and I know that it's already been shared that if he told you something, you could count on it. And we would talk about it, and he said, "Now, what's that bill again? I think I've read about it." And I'd say, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Now, do you need my vote on that?" I said, "Well, Johnny, that's up to you. I'm just polling you to ask you what your vote is." He said, "Well, I'm just asking you, do you need my vote?" And I said, "Well," he said, "Well, does leadership want my vote on this?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we would like to have it." He says, "Well, you got my vote." And if he ever told me that, I knew I could take it to the bank, because whatever he told you, he was going to do. And he will be sorely missed in the General Assembly. He was a great friend, great colleague, and it was, and Philip, what you shared about him was very moving at the funeral. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Well, I had the privilege to sit behind Johnny Turner, and the reason he wasn't in his seat is because he was the quintessential gentleman. And if you had your wife or you had a page, he was always offering his seat to everybody else. He was looking out for everybody that was there. He was very aware of who was there, how he could help, and what he could do. So he was a quintessential gentleman. But I learned never to negotiate with him, or at least if you start negotiating, just accept his first offer because you're likely to go downhill from then. He was a great guy and a great representative for his district. I miss you, Johnny. We're all going to miss you back there in the corner.
Thank you all for the kind comments, and he will be greatly missed by all of us that knew him. I think we could all go back to memories that would bring a smile to our face when we think about Johnny and our interactions with him. Now we need to move on, and we still have not approved the minutes of the September meeting, so I will need a motion to approve the minutes. Motion made and second. Any objections? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to go a little bit out of order because I don't want John to have to spend the entire afternoon here since we do share a name. So I'm going to move this administrative reg up to the beginning here and get it over with right off the bat. It's a regulation from the Transportation Cabinet on our agenda today, 601 KAR 9:220. John, if you want to introduce yourself for the record and give us a brief synopsis of what this reg does.
Thank you, Co-Chairman. My name is John Johnson. I'm with the Transportation Cabinet, Office of Legal Services, and Assistant General Counsel.
Could you make sure your mic's on? Is it bright green?
It's bright green, but I don't have much of a voice today.
Okay, very good.
We're offering an amendment to 601 KAR 9:220 motor vehicle dealer plates. We'd had complaints and recommendations from our shareholders regarding test drives. In the old version of the regulation, there was a test drive vehicle. You had to be present with the dealer. The dealer would have to accompany the purchaser, prospective purchaser, or a salesman of the dealership. And what we found was on more than one occasion, people would like to take the car home to their friends or their spouse or significant other and show the vehicle to help them in the buying decision. They weren't able to do that. So we made an amendment that basically removes that requirement for the dealer to be present or a salesperson so that a prospective buyer can take the one test drive but take it and make it last overnight so that they can take the vehicle home overnight, show their family. That was well received, the amendment, and everybody was in agreement that was a good addition to the regulation. In addition to that, as you know, dealership plates are heavily regulated as to number per dealership. We've got an amendment in this regulation to allow for good calls, additional dealership plates to be issued, and those are over in Section 2, subparagraph 4B, and it lists examples: lost or stolen plates, pro-business activities, transportation to auto auctions and repair shops, and on occasion we may and have found that there would be a need for additional dealer plates due to flood, tornado damage, temporary economic downturn. And that's our amendment in a nutshell. There's some other amendments that are basically just small changes to the wording in the definition section. We'd like to offer those amendments to the committee today, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, John. Any questions or objections? Seeing none, let the record reflect that the committee has reviewed the amendment. Thank you, John. That was simple enough. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Now we will move on to back in order to the Transportation Cabinet. Will present to us their asset management with Deputy Secretary and Assistant State Highway Engineer. Tracy, I did that because I wasn't going to try to pronounce your last name.
Morning, or good afternoon. My name is John Moore, Deputy State Highway Engineer.
Tracy Novacek, Assistant State Highway Engineer.
And we also struggle, so we appreciate your, but we appreciate the opportunity this morning, or this afternoon. It's a Friday. To come and share with you the importance of a well-managed asset management program as we focus on the condition of our bridges and pavements. And I'm glad to be accompanied by the expert on the topic who has spent her career in pavement management and then grown that expertise in bridge management through her few years. I won't give a clue on her career because that'll give other clues as well. But Tracy is an expert in this field, and I'm happy to let her walk you through the nuances. So,
thank you, John, and thank you everybody for having us here today. Today I'll be talking to you about one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is our bridges and pavements. I'll walk you through what an average investment looks like for us on a yearly basis. We'll talk a little bit about what our investment strategies are for bridges and pavements, what some of the challenges are that we face, and then how maintenance and asset management work together for the cabinet. Our bridges and pavements provide connection to businesses, agriculture, schools, health services, and beyond. We take that responsibility seriously and have a strong process to align our investments to our goals. We have over 9,000 state-owned bridges. I do want to note that there are an additional approximately 5,000 bridges in the state that are county and city-owned. On the pavement side, Kentucky has over 63,000 lane miles of pavement. Of that 63,000 lane miles, 25,000 lane miles are rural secondary and managed through that separate process. In today's presentation, I will only be referring to pavement outside of the rural secondary system and state-owned bridges only. For those bridges and pavements, our current projections show that it would take, on average, an annual investment of around $1 billion to preserve our inventory. So the first thing we'll talk about is what average annual investments look like for us. The average annual investment for structures is around $280 million. That includes about a $30 million portion that comes from our annual maintenance budget. Good management for bridges includes a cross-section of different treatment types, from typical maintenance through preservation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. Our annual bridge investments must cover our by-state commitments for projects on our over 30 border bridges, mandatory response items from federal highways, and I'll give you an example of what that means. In 2021, you may remember there was a closure of a bridge in Memphis due to a fracture in a weld. And what that did was trigger a need for us to inspect and repair similar weld details throughout the state. Those response type items cost us on average about $20 million a year. From that $280 million also, we have to take care of our emergency and unplanned repairs for bridges. And then of course there are planned investments on state structures, from bridge painting to full replacements. Our projected annual need to maintain our bridges is close to $500 million. Like bridges, pavements require a large toolbox of projects and treatment types. The average annual pavement investment is close to $530 million, which meets our projected need and includes everything from strip patching to full replacements when we have failing base layers. Pavement investments also go well beyond traditional asphalt resurfacing and include beneficial low-cost preservation treatments like asphalt thinlays and microsurfacing. The 6-year asset management plan process allows us to anticipate funding and develop a strategy to move us closer to our goals, address the needs of the state, and manage state exposure to unforeseen events. A good example of that is within our current strategy to fund major improvements on the I-65 corridor bridges to help keep our freight and traffic moving, while also trying to mitigate unforeseen events in our smaller local communities by eliminating bridges with timber piles that are susceptible to deterioration from moving water. The principles we use to recommend those projects and treatments are much like the principles you use when you think of your risk tolerance for managing retirement investments, maintaining a house through a mix of different cost treatments, or proactively changing the oil of your car to avoid a larger cost repair. Although we seek the best use of the funding possible, we do face bridge challenges. There is significant shortfall between average annual bridge funding and our projected needs for state-owned structures. A common symptom of underinvestment in an aging bridge network is an increase in postings that limit the weight the bridge carries and a rise in unforeseen repairs. And remember, please, that when bridges are weight posted or enclosed, necessary repairs to restore the movement for those school buses, those emergency vehicles, or those agricultural equipment fixes that structure, but then diverts our capacity or our projects for another community's necessary bridge repairs. The bridge challenges we face have resulted in rising needs for our bridge inventory. At the same time, our pavement conditions have been consistently improving through both traditional investments and application of low-cost treatments to extend the life of our fair condition pavement. A common mistake is to assume you should prioritize and address poor condition bridges and pavements only, which results in higher cost repairs statewide. More cost-effective management utilizes all treatment types, including maintenance and preservation, to treat poor condition assets while also working to prevent today's fair condition bridge or pavement from becoming tomorrow's poor condition bridge or pavement. So again, just to reiterate, a good everyday example of the benefit of proactive projects is the simple oil change that you do for your car, which helps prevent that higher cost repair. And Kentucky is a nationally recognized leader in proactive pavement preservation for both our process and our expertise in using that full toolbox of different treatments well beyond asphalt resurfacing to maintain our system. The 6-year plan and the State Pavement Preservation Fund is how we address the majority of our bridge and pavement needs, but another piece of the puzzle is a healthy maintenance budget. The activities funded by our maintenance budget help preserve our pavements and bridges to lower the cost and need of projects. A good example is activities like tree and brush trimming, mowing, pothole patching, and drainage improvements that help keep water off the pavement, which helps prevent excessive damage that leads to the surface and base layer deterioration, which then delays the need for higher cost repairs. Our bridge and pavement network is large and challenging to manage. Despite those challenges, our process allows us to combine data, local input, and our goals to make improvements statewide. Our plans come together within the 6-year plan, but are also complemented by the state pavement preservation budget and the maintenance budget. Responsibly maintaining and preserving bridges and pavements throughout their entire life cycle improves safety and mobility for the state. And with that, we'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate the presentation. Senator Williams does have a question.
Thank you very much. We just had a major incident with the I-471 bridge across the Ohio River where they've shut the southbound lanes and one northbound lane due to a fire on the Ohio side. Is that something that we participate in having to pay, or is that Ohio, or how does that affect our contingency? Do you have money, or is Ohio covering it all?
So the incident up in Ohio, it's on an Ohio approach to the Dan Carter Beard Bridge. That's not the same as what happened with the fire on Brent Spence Bridge, which was on the shared span in which we shared the burden. But we are setting up traffic control in Kentucky to support that effort, but that will be included in the ER effort that they will participate with FHWA. So we anticipate those funds to be reimbursed through FHWA.
Thank you very much.
Coach Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you all for your report and the work that you do. Can you give us a little, I guess, we see the funding that you're spending, but how much how far behind are we on keeping pace with the paving that we should be doing? Is there a dollar amount that we fall short every year that you could share with us?
That's a complicated question, and partially because there's 3 systems of pavement systems in Kentucky, and what Tracy presented on was our MP system, which is a portion of the state system. There's a rural secondary, which it's part of the state system, which we don't have as good of a pulse on, and then the local the road system, which we don't have a good pulse on. For the state system, we're in good shape. For the rural secondary and local, it's hard to tell, to be honest.
For the state system, what we're seeing on average right now for the last perhaps 4 years is that we can get to approximately every 13 years, which is pretty close to where we want to be.
Okay. Well, I thank you for that information. I know that we are running behind. I hear that, and it's easy to, if you I guess the point I was wanting to make is that we fund our transportation system with other what we do with maintenance, and what we spend at the state level is with our gas tax. All the construction, most of our construction is done through federal dollars with our state match. But I guess the point I wanted to make it is our gas tax today is 27.8 cents a gallon. Our gas tax in 2012 was 27.8 cents a gallon. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that costs have gone up since 2012, and we still have the same dollars to work on our roads, and our formula is just not keeping track with the cost of our formula's not doing anything for us.
I would offer we are falling behind on our bridge condition across the state, as well as in our maintenance efforts. And so I believe your assertion is absolutely correct, but I believe we've let other places fall behind rather than our pavement condition.
Well,
generally speaking,
I will compliment you doing very well with your stretching dollars as far as they can go. I know the tonnage wise and what we're able to do for roads every year. I hear complaints that we're just not getting the job done to some degree, and mainly it's because of funding. But I hear of roads in our system now that haven't been paid for 20 years, and that's used to that 13 years was commonplace. But just wanted to make that point to members of the committee that we still have the same revenue today as we had in 2012. So just FYI. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me ask this, something that's been brought to my attention. So are we on pace of doing our letting for our resurfacing? Because what was brought to my attention, apparently we've already been doing some letting on some micro surfacing, but not on regular asphalt. Why would we not go ahead and be doing regular asphalt at minimum simultaneously rather than doing one over the other? Is that within your all's bailiwick?
I don't know of a letting that would only be microsurfacing. We do have microsurface projects that go out, but the vast majority of them are resurfacing projects.
So are we currently letting projects right now with regular asphalt?
yes.
Okay, very
In
good.
fact, the last 3 months of this year are due to starting into next fiscal year's investments, as well as increasing investments due to some of the observations about the reduced asphalt work that's out there. Then we have there is a significant uptake that we've shared with the industry and shared with the committee previously to close out this year that has significant efforts of resurfacing, as well as with the addition of a new fiscal year budget. We tend to start that around this time of the year as well.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. There have been no other questions. I think that's good job. Appreciate it. You all enjoy your weekend. Next up, we will have an update on the CAVIS system. Miss Heather Stout is here with us, and looks like Tabitha Clemens from the Grant County Clerk's Office is with us. Good afternoon, ladies. If you would please introduce yourselves for the record, and then we may begin.
Good afternoon. I'm Heather Stout, the Executive Director of the Information Technology Office at Transportation Cabinet.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Clemens, Grant County Clerk and President of the Kentucky County Clerks Association for 2 more weeks.
She's going to miss me.
I still have your number.
That's right. Okay, so we're going to go through a comparison on numbers again. You guys have seen this before, but we'll give you an update on those, some future CAVIS-related implementations that we have coming soon, and update on the KYELT system and lien management. So here's an update on comparisons. We, I think in August, exceeded the $1 billion in collections mark. It's all fairly equal. We're a little ahead in 2024, but I think things are shaping up fairly well for CAVIS now. The collections in top 10 counties, if you remember back in, I believe, July, Jefferson County was actually negative. They were behind about $2 million. There's been a drastic change and improvements made and process changes. They also reached out to other county clerks for assistance in helping them recover on their backlog. And I think that really helped them get over the hurdle and get ahead. So we're very excited about these numbers. I think everybody has made some progress. And then some of the future CAVIS-related implementations, of course, we have centralized lien management. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I explain the KYELT system. Fleets with unexpiring plates, the DOR, PVA, of course, the vehicle valuation that happens first part of January is coming up soon, incorporating electric vehicle charges into CAVIS, some additional web renewal enhancements, incorporating the ability to renew boats online and other things like that. And being able to pay for a renewal even if you are late. Right now you can't do that. If you are overdue or expired, you can't continue to renew your vehicle online. So we're going to be working on that process. On-demand printing of temp tags at dealerships, that's been something on our radar for a long time. So that's something that we are excited to start pursuing soon. Electronic sheriff inspections. Excuse me. I think this is greatly going to help with a reduction of fraud in that area and just make the process smoother for everyone by eliminating the paper process that has to go back and forth between sheriffs and individuals and clerks. And then improve verification of organizations and individuals without a Kentucky license by incorporating a couple of integrations on FEIN and SSN in the early process of creating accounts. So that's on our radar as well. And the insurance system modernization, getting that final piece off the mainframe and into a modern system. So there's a lot of other work that's happening in CAVIS. There's still, a few little issues, process improvement things like that are still being worked, little edge case situations that come up that are one-off events that have to be worked by developer. So there's still plenty of work that's happening on the CAVIS team. We still have a very full, robust team of resources working on CAVIS, but we definitely feel like we're in a much more stable place than we were, months ago. Do you agree?
I agree.
Okay, good. All right. All right, I will talk a little bit about the Kentucky Electronic Lien and Titling System. So just to give you a reminder, this allows dealerships to submit vehicle transactions, supporting documents and fees electronically to the county clerk. It allows county clerks to review and reject those electronically to request correction, whereas in the past, a lot of paper was going back and forth, and the runners would have to come and pick them up and take them back, get corrections, bring it back, a lot of back and forth. So that's now allowed to be done electronically. It allows liens to be electronically requested in the driver's county of residence. And a big factor here is that dealerships must be approved because they have to meet certain criteria in order to be able to participate in this process. Right now, we've got about 150 dealerships that have been approved and right at 100 that have actually been implemented. CAVIS is working currently on integrating with the KYELT system, which will just greatly improve the process for the clerks in being able to automatically submit directly to CAVIS. So that's a big step forward. We started the pilot on this project in April with 8 counties and dealerships, and we are now rolled out statewide. So all county clerks are able to accept electronic title packets via the KYELT system. Actually, it's 117 county clerks are now processing transactions. Those other counties, they just really haven't received any from dealerships yet. 150, as I said, 150 MVL approved dealerships, but only about 100 are implemented so far. And over 6,000 transactions have been completed through this system. So it's been, we've learned a lot. There's been some updates, changes to it, bugs fixed, different things, but it's been very good. And I think once we get CAVIS integrated to this, it's going to even further streamline the process. So that is coming, that direct CAVIS integration is coming soon. And then also full lien management system. So this is something you guys asked with centralized lien management. We have to get everyone in all the counties on a statewide lien number in order to start making it centralized and allowing electronic filing and releasing of liens. So we're having those discussions, and we're moving in that direction. I don't have a date yet for when that's going to be actually implemented. Right now, we're just allowing dealerships to request liens be filed. So we're halfway there, or a quarter of the way there, I should say, but we're certainly making progress in our discussions regards to that. So top 10 counties right now, and somebody was asking me earlier why Fayette wasn't on here. This is the counties that have, this is not based on their population, this is based on how many they've processed. So some counties were kind of ahead of the game and started much earlier, so they kind of got up on the list a little bit, and some counties are discouraging it still a little bit. They're trying to go really slowly. And then there's still 50 dealerships who haven't onboarded. So I think that's really why they're not in our top 10 list yet. But I think as soon as they ramp up their volume, we're going to see them jump quickly. Jefferson started later than all the others, and they've already, started exceeding. So we expect the growth to continue in all counties as we keep this project going forward. And that is all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Heather, and thank you for leading the charge on this. It has been a Herculean task, to say the least, but you all have done a fabulous job. We've came a long way since back in January when we first started having these conversations. You're doing great. I do have a question back on the centralized lien system. Mm-hmm. So it begins January 2025. Right after January, someone files a lien. Is it going in on the old system, or is it go in? Will it be ready to go by the end to go into the new that goes statewide?
I don't think we'll be at a statewide. Actually, I know we won't be at a statewide lien system the 1st of January. The dealers can still file liens, so we're getting there. But we have to get all the county clerks on the same page with using a different lien number. We already have built in a lien number generator into the KYELT system, so we can start getting to that statewide lien number, but we haven't rolled out a new process for them. And I just don't foresee that happening before January. But we're closer than we were even a few months ago. So probably in the first quarter sometime we'll be right there. And then we'll start onboarding financial institutions and things like that.
All right, very good. Thank you. Representative Lafferty.
I do have a quick question. Are you seeing any trouble with leased vehicles through the new CAVIS system?
I don't know about trouble with leased vehicles through CAVIS. I think there was possibly some issues through ELT systems, some process changes and things. Do you know anything about this?
So in the beginning of CAVIS, even the first several months, there were some hiccups with leases, but those have been resolved for quite some time now. And then in ELT, there was a few changes that they had to make in order to get the information in ELT where we could copy it over into CAVIS. So, but I think that, to my knowledge, those have been resolved.
So if we are having a little bit of trouble in our counties with leased vehicles, who should we point them in the direction to reach out to?
If they are having trouble with leased vehicles through the electronic lien and titling system, their primary point of contact has been Carlos Luna with Tyler Technologies.
Okay.
If they are having trouble through CAVIS, there's a cavis@ky.gov email address that I think all the clerks at this point are very familiar with how to reach out to CAVIS team.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. I believe you've got everybody's questions answered.
All right.
So, next, we got Ms. Clemens. You want to begin your presentation?
Okay, thank you. So we appreciate the invitation from our chairs to be here with you today. On behalf of the Clerks Association, we have certainly enjoyed working with you and your colleagues to modernize the vehicle registration areas of the county clerk's offices. We have a great partnership along with KYTC and other stakeholders, and look forward to this upcoming legislative session to address some things that we still have ongoing. But before we talk about our legislative priorities for next session, I'd like to give a little bit of perspective on the CAVIS transition and the ELT rollout. We're 11 months into CAVIS. I can't believe there was days when Heather and I would be on the phone late at night, early in the morning, and I would think that this is never going to pass, and it has, and we're 11 months in. There's been vast improvements overall to the program, to the processing in county clerk's offices for us to embrace new processing. That takes a while to get your mind wrapped around new processes. So it has been a long 11 months, but we certainly have made some huge strides. We do have more strides to make, though, and I'm encouraged by Heather sharing that the CAVIS team is still robust and they're still actively working. I know that they are, but for all 120 county clerks who might tune in and listen, it's important for us to hear that feedback because we still have things that we want to see implemented. In fact, just this week, I was contacted about being able to print our application for titles. We call them VTRs. It's a lot of time to sit and fill out every person's information on those VTRs when they come in. So being able to have that information entered into CAVIS and press print would be a huge time saver, and they're working on that currently. So that's impressive. As far as KYELT, I will say that Carlos Luna has made a huge impact in the county clerk's offices by his outreach and his availability to county clerks during this implementation. And, a lot of our deputies, myself included in this comment, we are so used to touching paper at our desk. That's what we do. And to have to move past touching paper and seeing information on a screen is a struggle. I mean, it has been a struggle. But once you overcome that, you can see with the numbers how quickly Jefferson has surged. My county is in 4th now. I was a little disappointed in that, so I'm going to have to get on my dealers to send more through ELT. I like to be in the top 3. So it's, but it is encouraging to see counties embracing this, from large to small. And to see the advancement that we're making. One of the things that we had envisioned for this was that it was going to be very similar to what we have in e-recording, where we can just review the document and approve. We're not quite there yet. She talked about we're still working on that integration. And one of the things that we're going to ask during the next session is that we postponed the 3 p.m. deadline for the next business day requirement for the clerks because we are having to copy and paste all of that information from one system to another. That takes more time than just looking at the document, reviewing it, and either rejecting or approving. So we're hopeful that that we'll get to be able to postpone that deadline. We're not trying to push it off, but it does take more time, and we're getting emails saying we're behind when we can't control that process at this moment. Then one of the legislative hopeful projects that we have is we'd like to see some support for moving most of the fees associated with the county clerk's vehicle registration transactions be set via regulatory process, which would be led by KYTC. We think such a change would allow the Transportation Cabinet to set appropriate fees by taking feedback from clerks and dealers and customers and legislators through our regulatory process. You set a precedent last year by creating that a regulatory process for establishing fees for overweight vehicles, and we'd like to see the same process extended to additional motor vehicle registrations. So that's one thing that we are interested in. Second, there are a few items related to the CAVIS transition that we need to address through state law change. The clerks need the authority to accept affidavit of ownerships to issue boat certificate of titles. We know that there's John boats sitting in barns that haven't seen the water in decades, and then great-grandson comes in and wants to put that boat on the water, and we need a way to process that information. So we'd like to see some change there. We also need to clarify that out-of-state driver's license could be used for sheriff's inspections. We do have folks who have out-of-state driver's license. Maybe they claim their residency in Florida, but they have property here in Kentucky, and they need to be able to get a sheriff's inspection to title a vehicle to keep here at their Kentucky property. Additionally, KYTC needs to be given statutory authority to modify CAVIS to automatically terminate liens after a certain number of years. And then we need to delete the requirement for clerks to keep a paper log of temporary tags. So right now, if you come into the county clerk's office, we process that temporary tag in CAVIS, but then we're required to have a form signed by the person getting the temporary tag, and then we have a paper log that we have to write all the information down in the paper log to keep. It would be nice if we could just print that log out of CAVIS because that information is there. So we'd like to see that be discontinued. We certainly support ongoing conversations related to developing a real-time insurance lookup tool. This would be so much better than having to tell people about the 45-day rule. If you're a county clerk, you know exactly what that means. It means their insurance has to be effective within 45 days of their transaction in our office. I can't tell you the number of times I have taken heat with beautiful, colorful language from folks who come in and they're aggravated because their expiration date is the end of the month, but their effective date was 6 months ago, and I can't take their card. It would be awesome to have a real-time insurance lookup where we could look it up and know that they have insurance and move forward. It would save time. It would create a more efficient transition in our office, and we would know that they have insurance because it's in that system. That would be nice for all Kentuckians to feel safe on the roads. Additionally, we'd love to have some conversations about how we treat ATVs in the state of Kentucky and ATV dealers. They're certainly more like automobiles these days. We would like to see them to be able to dealer assign ATVs where they're trading in between the dealers. And then also look at the tax collection at the time of initial titling like we do vehicles instead of a sales tax at the dealership. So that's one thing that we would like to have some conversations about. The last thing that I want to touch on real quick is I've been really happy today to put on a motor vehicle hat instead of an election hat. But I have one thing that we would like to talk about after talking with several clerks over the last few days about the election. One thing that has kind of come up in those conversations is the number of folks who had updated their driver's license and updated their address on their driver's license, but showed up to vote. And in the voter registration system where that information is supposed to come from driver's license over to voter registration, it's not consistent, but there's certainly some improvement that needs to be made in those two systems to be able to communicate with each other more consistently, because we had several folks in my small county and other counties across the Commonwealth that their driver's license was updated, but we did not receive that information in voter registration. So that created some lines on election day because there's forms we have to fill out for that. We have to make sure that they are, that they are at that address and things. So that certainly slowed things down on election day for us. So we'd like to see some improvement there. But in conclusion, we appreciate you taking the time to hear from us today and look forward to anything that we can sit down and talk about through the rest of the interim and then at the start of session.
Thank you, Ms. Clemens. Real quickly on the ATV titles from dealer to dealer, is that about the only thing left now that you can't do dealer to dealer? I mean, you can boat, you can cars,
Trailers.
right.
Mm-hmm.
but we can't ATVs.
Right. ATVs, according to what we've been told with CAVIS, the implementation of CAVIS, according to the law, we can't deal or assign ATVs.
Okay. All right. Do have a couple questions. Thank you very much. Representative Smith.
I'd be cautious about supporting another tax on a ATV and getting a card every year to pay a tax on. I hope that's not what you're driving to. But first of all, congratulations on the election. You clerks, I haven't heard any negatives as far as your association, how they ran it. So I know it was overwhelming, probably one of the historic numbers. So they've done a great job. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Your excess fees, have they changed any with this new system? I know clerks collect an excess fee. They turn it back over to the county each year. Has that changed any? Do you see that changing any?
So first I'm going to address ATVs. Not necessarily in property tax collection like ad valorem, but in the sales tax that's collected at the time of purchasing is what I was discussing.
Okay.
So
they
at
pay
that,
sales tax when they buy
they
them
pay
anyway.
correct. But what happens in the clerk's office? We're doing the same amount of work for that transfer, but we don't receive any. We receive $6 off of every one of those transfers. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't want to see another card be sent to our citizens.
Right. I understand that.
I don't like the first one, let alone the second one. But back on your excess fees, I was just wanting to address that.
So excess fees will be turned over by March 15th of 2025 for this year for clerks who do not fee pool. For clerks who fee pool, they turn over anything excess at the end of every month. It goes to the fiscal court and then they pay out. I can tell you that county clerks throughout the Commonwealth are down in revenue right now. While there's data that supports, we've seen collections be similar to what we have in Avis before. There's certainly a higher expense to certain things. Health insurance is one of them that county clerks are seeing a rise in health insurance, which overall concerns our budgets. But equally, there are counties. Mine, for example, I always have excess fees to turn over. It does vary year to year on how much that is. It's not just it doesn't average out every time. But I am really down this year.
Do you contribute it to the system?
I don't contribute it so much to the system as much as I think Kentuckians are hurting. And I think people are not paying close enough attention to how much they're hurting. They're making decisions at their kitchen tables at night on whether they're going to pay an insurance bill or if they're going to pay for a child to go on a field trip at school or they're going to pay for food and gas for their family. And vehicle registration is falling to the side where we're just not going to pay that. We're going to put it off another month.
So they're running their vehicles not up to date.
Some
on the registration.
Some absolutely.
And most probably on the insurance also. Then if they fall hand in hand.
Could be.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what those numbers look like, but I can certainly say that there's conversations amongst all of us in the county clerk's offices over the last 6 months about how tight our budgets are running compared to what they used to.
One final, Mr. Chairman. Is there anything that you can do for us before January or before session that gives us a better input on insurance, on this registration? Can you give us a better plan? Is it better to look at a 12-month payment? I mean, we're losing revenue, we're losing insurance, people being covered due to what you just said, due to inflation, due to the cost. Can your association, I guess you said you're stepping out, but can they come up with plans to help us, guide us in the best way to keep insurance on vehicles, best way to keep registrations up to date? We know that's needed, so it's better if somebody comes with an option that tells us this is what you do every day.
Sure.
Tell us this is what would help get the revenue, help us get registration where it needs to be, insurance mainly, because of the uninsured out there, and I know that's a big. Those percentages have gone up greatly. So,
right.
But thank you for your
Sure, absolutely. We'd be interested. We'll take that back to our motor vehicle committee and have conversations about that and see what we can pull together for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Co-Chair Higdon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Tabitha, thank you for being here today and your work. On the election issue of the driver's licenses, address, and voter registration not being up to date, is that with the Board of Elections or Secretary of State? Where does that information get entered?
That information comes into the voter registration system from driver's license into voter registration system that's housed by the State Board of Elections. Okay. And then the county clerks update those. So as they come in, they're based off of the address, they're supposed to go to the county of record for that individual. Sometimes that gets mixed up. We have to transfer those from county to county because we would get, for example, Crittenden in my county, that's a city in my county. It also crosses lines with 2 other counties. So sometimes it's hard to know which Crittenden address goes to Grant versus Kenton. Same with Corinth in my county, it touches 4 counties. It's hard to know which one of those streets is in Harrison or Grant or Scott or Owen. So I think that's where those zip codes does not indicate county lines is what I'm getting at. Okay. So I think that it becomes difficult there, and then it gets transferred to the wrong county per se, and then it doesn't, it doesn't get updated, doesn't get transferred back to the right county. So I think that we need to look at a different way of integrating those systems so that we can ensure that the voter is being registered in the correct county.
Okay, and then the temporary tags. We've learned lately that there's a lot of misuse of temporary tags. So you're I guess you have that log. Well, I heard a story about a dealer that sold 90 cars and 3,500 temporary tags that they received.
Wow.
So obviously there's a problem there somewhere.
I would think so. Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, I'm just asking. I'm sure we'll see legislation on temporary tags.
Yeah. Well, in that we hope that you will allow us to get rid of the paper format of that log, because an electronic format of that log could catch fraud more quickly.
That sounds good, because we definitely need to do something.
I would think you would need to do something.
Appreciate your work.
My pleasure.
Coach Higdon, I think the dealer just got confused. He gave a dealer tag for each day of the month for each one of those 90 vehicles, and therefore, so they're good for a full 30 days, not one every day. So Senator Wheeler has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going back to the ATVs. Now, when I was working on the Senate bill, it started out as Senate Bill 75 a few years back, and we looked at possibly tagging ATVs for road use. At that time, I think that we got a little, Senator Higdon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we got a little bit of pushback from the cabinet as far as actually registering those within the CAVA system, that would be relatively problematic. Do you know if at this point that could be done if legislation was authorized?
I don't know the answer to that, but Heather might.
All right. Well, I see.
Maybe you can follow up with Heather afterwards. I don't. Yeah.
Secondly,
I know that there would be some happy constituents in Grant County if that happened.
Yeah, I was thinking there'd probably be a few in Eastern Kentucky as well. So that's. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Ms. Clemens, for your
you.
presentation today. And that brings us to our final piece on our agenda with the Kentucky State Police driving testing. And I believe we have Captain Chris Baker here with us today from the State Police. Good afternoon, Captain. If you would please introduce yourself for the record, you may begin your presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Captain Chris Baker. I'm the commander of the driver's testing branch of the Kentucky State Police. Senate Bill 107, which was passed in...
Captain, don't mean to interrupt you. Is your bright green light on your mic?
It is, sir.
Okay, pull a little closer
to you. Get a little closer.
There you go.
I'll talk louder.
There you go. Thank you.
Captain Chris Baker, Kentucky State Police driver testing branch. Senate Bill 107, which was passed in the 2024 regular legislative session, mandated the Kentucky State Police driver testing branch to operate a new pilot program in 5 counties. This was to begin on September 1st of this year, as it did, and it is mandated to go until June 30th of 2026. What we do in this program is driver's test administrators. We go to 5 counties to administer a road test only. We will be in each county 2 times per month. This program is only in counties that do not have a regional office. If there's a regional office in the county, we won't use this county as a pilot county. It's only open to residents of that county, and they are only for the intermediate driver's license only. To just update you on that, 16 and 17-year-olds, when they receive their permit, 180 days later, they will get an intermediate license. We place a sticker on their driver's license to indicate they now have an intermediate as opposed to a permit, so they don't have to see KYTC staff to get issued a new license. This is the only phase of the process where they don't have to see KYTC. They schedule these appointments online using our online scheduler as you would for any other driver's test. The 5 counties we are currently operating in are Oldham, Barron, Marion, Grant, and Perry. We are not mandated which counties we go to. We just have to be in each county 2 times per month. And that's just kind of a quick overview of the program, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Captain. And before I turn it over to Coach Higdon, I know he's got some questions. But we were talking out, and this is more of just for public information. One of the things you all have been experiencing that's created some, I guess, I don't want to say delays, but congestion, how about that, is people signing up from counties outside that county that they're not qualified to take it because they live in another county, and that's taking up slots. And that was one of the things we talked about out in the hallway. You want to speak to that for just a second?
Yes, sir. So on the online scheduler, it clearly says, I'll use Oldham County for instance, to test at this site, you have to be an Oldham County resident. Well, people don't pay attention to that, and they sign up for an appointment. So my staff are then having to look at this every day. Barron County has been a big issue. Most days we have one administrator going to each site, so 20 to 25 tests because it takes about 15 minutes to do the test. We have had over 100 people who were ineligible sign up for one day. So then my regional supervisor for that region, he's having to go into the computer, he's having to call 100 people. You're not eligible to take this test today because you do not live in Barron County, but let me see if we can help you get set up somewhere else. That has been an issue, yes, sir.
Thank you, Captain. Coach Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Captain Baker, thank you for being here today, and thank you for not only your work, but KSP. I mean, you all have worked diligently to try to work with us and the new system of driver's license since we changed from the circuit court clerks to the regional offices. We've come a long way, and you all are too. Like I said, I'm going to pat you on the back and say, well done. We still have a long way to go, but you all have made great strides, and we wouldn't be where we are today if without your all's efforts, and I do appreciate that. This pilot project is a real, I think, a real positive step, and I know we have a few little issues with that, and we'll try to maybe work on that in this next session to get those lined out, change some wording in the legislation. These committee meetings are we learn a lot of stuff in these committee meetings. And one thing I'd like to, all my colleagues, if you have legislation that involves the Kentucky State Police, please contact them. Let them know that you're working on legislation that might affect them. And State Police is a chain of command organization. They really believe in the chain of command. Angela Parker sitting back there. If you don't know where to go, look up her on the in your email addresses and give Angela an email. Tell her what you have on your mind, and she will get you in touch with the right people, because it is important that we communicate. State police are great. We ask them to do all kinds of things. They never complain. They always do it, but they would like to have some input in the legislative process when you're drafting a bill, and certainly a lot of times when we ask them to do something, we need to include a monetary, because there is an expense involved in the things they do. So we need to keep them in mind when we do that. And I've learned that I've not always been the best in the world when it comes to communicating. So that's my mea culpa to you all to try to make sure that we do it the right way. And again, thanks to the Kentucky State Police for your work on this, and thank you, Captain Baker.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Co-Chair Higdon, and I will say kudos to what you just said. I try to make it a habit in the house, especially if someone wants to use KSP or put something new on them. Are we funding it? What's it going to cost? Have we talked to them? We had no saying when I was over there. Angela was around at that time. They always want us to do more with less, and we just got to the point we just couldn't do no more. We got to have it. It takes it, but they try. They try. We really appreciate them. Thank you for those comments. Representative Heverin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to make a brief comment, if that's okay. Captain Baker is from Litchfield. I apologize for not recognizing you in the hallway earlier. Thank you for all that you do. I greatly appreciate it. But I do appreciate you all bringing KSP to the table. I've been bringing KSP into some other legislation, and it's been very helpful. Actually doing a ride along with KSP on Saturday night. To kind of get an idea of what you all do on the roads. I'm assuming that you might catch some speeders, but you do a lot more too than that. So anyways, just want to say thank you. Happy to highlight an 18th District constituent, and I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
Captain, if you could check out who the troopers she's going to be assigned to, see if they can drop her off at the local jail, let her have the full treatment, full experience.
You may send prayers.
Yeah. So, anyone else got any questions? If not, thank you, Captain. We appreciate you as always. Appreciate the State Police. Transportation, thank you all for being here today. As always, we appreciate you all as well. It's Friday afternoon. We're getting out of here before 2 hours, trying to get everybody home. If there's nothing else, I will remind members that we do have another interim joint committee. It'll be our final committee. It will be on Friday. It's on November the 22nd at 11 o'clock in this same room. So don't forget about that coming up. If there's nothing